Welcome to the Garde Arts Center in New London, Connecticut. This is a gubernatorial debate between Governor Dan Malloy and candidates Tom Foley and Joe Visconti. It's being presented by WNPR, CPTV, and The Day. I'm John Dankosky from WNPR's Where We Live. Joining me in asking questions tonight are Paul Chouanier from The Day and Harriet Jones of WNPR. Tonight's debate is a cumulative time debate, which means each candidate will have about 15 minutes of time to answer questions each. I'll be guiding the debate to make sure we get to a lot of topics and to make sure we get to the answers of the questions posed by my colleagues. There will be no breaks in this hour-long event. Each candidate will have a chance for closing statements. I would like to ask our crowd here at the Garde Arts Center to refrain from clapping or yelling or other outbursts during the debate, because we will give you plenty of time to clap at the end. Our first question comes from Paul Chouanier of The Day, and it goes to Tom Foley.
Evening, Mr. Foley. You have criticized what you call Governor Malloy's corporate welfare policies, including a deal with United Technologies that was applauded by many in the business community. Yet you have voiced support for Connecticut Innovations, a program your running mate, Heather Summers, used to grow her business. So I was hoping tonight you could better define where you see the line is, where is it appropriate to offer government incentives, and where it crosses the line to corporate welfare.
Very good question. Before I get started, I'd like to welcome my wife, Leslie, who's here, my running mate, Heather Summers. I'd like to welcome Joe Visconti. Thanks for being here tonight. And it's great being in New London and here in the 2nd Congressional District, which I'm very grateful I won by 7 points in the 2010 election. Corporate welfare, I object to because Governor Malloy has spent over $2 billion of taxpayers' money essentially paying companies to stay here who may or may not have been thinking about leaving. But one of the reasons why they're thinking about leaving is because he's raised taxes, he's made it more expensive to run a business here and to employ people. He's driven up everybody's electricity bills, for example. A lot of businesses use electricity, and if you raise their costs, it makes them less competitive. I support Connecticut Innovations and some of the business support programs that have been here for years, long before Governor Malloy got here, because they support small businesses and they provide credit and equity support for businesses that are small enough so they can't get that from traditional bank lending. I think that's a good thing if it's well managed and good credit decisions are being made, for example. But I don't support giving billions of taxpayer money, particularly given where our economy is, to large, wealthy corporations to keep jobs here that these people would keep here if the policies of this governor weren't so anti-business. You can't be anti-business and pro-job. So what I would do as governor is I would make this a more business-friendly environment. I do provide a lot more support for job creators. And I liken it to stepping on the brake and the accelerator at the same time. Governor Malloy, with his policies, is stepping on the brake. He's making it more expensive and more onerous for people who employ people in Connecticut. I would take my foot off the brake, and then you don't have to pay the bribes to the large, profitable corporations to keep jobs here.
Mr. Visconti?
Thank you, John. I'd like to thank the 10,000 Connecticut voters who signed a petition to get me on the stage here. I'd like to thank also my volunteers, my mother who's in the audience, my son Michael, sisters and brothers, the 2nd Congressional District in New London, and everyone who showed up here tonight. I'm an opponent of corporate welfare. This is how I entered politics. In West Hartford, where I'm from, an organization called Blueback Square was being developed in 2003. It was corporate cronyism to me because the development at the time was done without the bidding contract, where $48 million were used of the public treasury, and the bonds were sold without the obligation bonds being tied to the developer. 10 years later, I can report to you that last year, the developer, as I predicted, left America with all their holdings and left the country with all their holdings that were never tied to the municipal bond obligations. So I begin my political career against corporate cronyism. Right now, the small business owner is the one that is having a hard time. I've been on the trail 18 months, over 18 months now, visiting thousands of small business owners, and for them, the anger is that the major corporations, who many are doing well and are flush, have been given what I saw happen in West Hartford. So I believe that we are not the Connecticut State Bank and Trust. We need to get our fiscal house in order. We need to take a look at the deficits that are coming up. We have $1.2 billion deficits in 2016, $1.5 billion in 2017, and $1.8 billion in 2018. And I have not heard that discussed on this stage, and this is why I'm here. We have 3 tidal waves coming. And this is with a built-in $300 million revenue stream coming in. So we have a hard time. It's not all the governor's fault for this, but it's his responsibility. And it's time we take a look at how are we going to manage our own house and get these our fiscal house in order. Because if we don't, and we look to be a bank and give corporations money we can't afford, small business owners deserve our support first. And they are looking for decreased regulation. They're looking also for the state to take a look at why the consumer doesn't have any money in their pockets. High electricity costs. Everyone in this room knows exactly what it costs. Again, it's not all the governor's fault, but again, it's his responsibility and the Democrat Party's responsibility. Right now, it lays at their doorstep. I'm running for governor because I want to deliver to you all the hardships that I've heard from people, whether they're in foreclosure, whether they're losing their home, whether they're getting their electric shut off, all the hardships that are happening. Again, I'll say 3 times, it isn't the governor's fault, all of it, but is his responsibility to get these things under control.
Governor Malloy?
I want to welcome you to the stage. It's good to have you. Mr. Foley, it's good to be with you once again. I do want to recognize my wife, Kathy. We've been married 32 years. My oldest son, Dan, is with us. And, of course, the best lieutenant governor that anyone could possibly have, Nancy Wyman, is also with us, and I want to thank her. So both of you have mentioned small business. So here's a shocker. Before Nancy and I were sworn into office, there were no state programs for small businesses. None. 0, zip. We created that tool. It's called the Small Business Express Program. And so far, it has helped 1,200 small businesses access capital, access operating dollars in exchange for keeping their jobs and enlarging their jobs. Total job numbers, over 15,000 as a result of that program. It didn't exist before we were sworn in. Now let's talk about United Technologies. United Technologies is important in every voting district in the state of Connecticut. It has direct employees and members of the supply chain. Let's remember what their CFO said to Wall Street 4 years ago, before our election. That CFO questioned why anyone would do business in Connecticut and why they were doing business in Connecticut. And here we are. They're about to invest $500 million in a new engineering center. They're about to upgrade their facilities near Bradley Airport, their facilities in Bridgeport, and their facilities in Stratford as well. That supply chain has now been told that they need to double their capacity and then triple their capacity. That's exciting news. But here's the most important thing. In just a few years, 18 months to 22 months, Connecticut will be making more jet engines in Connecticut, in Middletown and in East Hartford, than at any time since 1983. And you know what? A lot of those parts are made in this community and surrounding communities. That 75,000 person supply chain is New London, it's Norwich, and it's every community in this district.
Mr. Foley, very quickly, how would you have handled negotiations with UTC differently than the governor did?
With who?
With UTC, United Technologies.
Well, I'm not sure there was a need to handle negotiations. Listen, the idea of the governor and his staff negotiating with a very sophisticated group of business people, I'm a little worried for Connecticut taxpayers. United Technologies, $400 million of tax credits that were given, and this is a revenue that's going to be missing now, and the taxpayers are going to have to make up the deal. And not one job was connected to that deal. Not one job was connected to capital expenditure, which doesn't necessarily mean jobs. And Governor, I'm surprised that you don't know that Connecticut Innovations and the Department of Economic and Community Development long preceded your being governor. And they have programs investing equity and providing credit for small businesses. So you didn't create these programs. And listen, we've lost 3,600 jobs in August. We lost 10,000 jobs in January. This governor is sitting here talking about having given away hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars supposedly to create jobs. But it isn't working, Governor. The economy has only grown 1% while Governor Malloy's been governor. 3.5 years. It may be the worst performing economy in the country. It simply hasn't worked, sir. You've said a lot of things you've done, and you've given a lot of money away, but you have no results to show for it.
Governor Malloy, do you have a quick response?
Sure. 60,000 private sector jobs have been created since Nancy and I were sworn in, after we inherited a state that hadn't grown a net new job in 22 years. The Small Business Express program is a brand new program, and in point of fact has helped 1,200 companies. But this is interesting. Tom says that in one breath we've spent $2 billion. That's a made-up number. In another breath he says a couple of $100 million. This is what UTC was about. It was about keeping our largest employer and our largest supply chain in Connecticut. But you know what dollars they'll spend? They'll spend the dollars that they earned under Republican governors. Under Republican governors. And we won't have to bond anything. We won't have to borrow anything. And in point of fact, it will bring thousands of jobs to Connecticut. When we're building more engines than at any time since 1983. That's change, folks. That's what competition looks like, and that's who we are.
Joe Visconti, do you have a quick thought?
I'm absolutely against corporate cronyism, corporate welfare, especially to United Technologies, a major multi-billion-dollar corporation. Everyone at home that's having a hard time, they may have to leave the state of Connecticut because they can't afford to live here, doesn't care about UTC. There are people who care about UTC, but the state of Connecticut has to take a look at the tidal waves of deficits that are coming and not be the Connecticut State Bank and Trust. We can't do it. UTC could have stayed here. They weren't going to go anywhere. Just the brownfield cleanups on their property would have been enough to keep them here.
Harriet Jones has the next question, and it is for Mr. Visconti.
You've been mentioning what you call the tidal waves of deficits coming. You've said if you were elected governor that you would go back to the public sector unions and ask for more concessions to face those deficits. And you've said if you don't get those concessions, tax hikes might be the only way to go. How do you think that they would respond to that ultimatum?
It's an ultimatum because the state of Connecticut voters and taxpayers need help. It is not the union's fault. We had deals with them. And what I've heard for 18 months, Joe, it's not our fault. We were promised, and I said to each individual I met over 18 months, we know it's not your fault. But in order to preserve the pensions and your long-term pensions funded so that you can retire and those behind you in the union can retire, we need your help. You don't have to give it. We may not have the concessions from the unions, even when we open up contracts. But the reality is, if we're not asking them for the whole apple, we're asking for a bite of the apple. I will put a number down to the unions, to the negotiators, and we will ask them for that. If they don't give back, there will be privatization, there will be layoffs. Because we have such a tidal wave coming after the 3 years, we're not sure where we're going to end up. So we need to look at cutting spending. We have to prune the state budget, not trim the state budget. And right now, everyone's talking about all these different ideas of trying to keep businesses here. We have to keep Connecticut residents here. And no one's looking out for the little guy. They're looking out because they think maybe if we give money to large corporations, they'll stay here. Union workers have to help us to help themselves. It's in their best interest, and it's not their fault. My mother-in-law was the treasurer of the State Employees Union. I know very well from her years ago exactly what happens inside. So I'm not blaming them. I would never blame them. We need their help to balance the future budgets.
Mr. Foley?
I was at, let me follow up a little bit on what the governor just said. I was at Pfizer today and talking to them about employing people in Connecticut, and as you know, they've made a number of significant reductions in employment here. And all they were saying to me was that they wanted a more cooperative state government, a government that worked with them and cooperated with them. They weren't looking for money, they weren't looking for subsidies, but they were looking for a dialogue, and they're not getting that dialogue from this governor. And while the governor talks about helping UTC, what about Fusion Paper? 145 jobs out of Sprague. Smith's Detection in Danbury, 130 jobs, gone. Yardney Technical Products, 150 jobs, gone. Unilever, Clinton, 200 jobs, gone. W.E. Bassett and Company, 300 jobs, gone. This is on your watch, Governor. Jobs are leaving the state. With respect to the union contracts, a contract is a contract, and unless the unions agree to open up the benefits contract, a governor cannot open it up unilaterally. There are a number of ways to get our fiscal responsibility, fiscal house in order. And I don't think we have to do it on the backs of our public employees. The public employees actually do the work of government, and they need to feel like they're well compensated, secure in their jobs. They can take care of their families both while they're working and in their retirement. But they're less than a third of the budget. It costs $21 billion this year to run the state of Connecticut. That's a lot of money. And I'm saying we can run the state of Connecticut for 2 more years on $21 billion. We don't have to cut benefits for state employees. We don't have to reduce the amount of their pay. And I actually think that with strong leadership, I'm an experienced leader, 35 years of running large corporations, I will have a plan and a destination for this state, and we will persuade the workers in state government that they will be better off with that plan, helping get the private sector up and going again, so that Connecticut, we can restore the pride and prosperity we knew as recently as 5 years ago.
Governor?
The reality is that Connecticut has seen the creation of 60,000 private sector jobs. There will not be a deficit in year 1, 2, or 3, as has been referenced. Average spending increases on a yearly basis in my administration have been less than 2.8%. Last year it was 2.4%. In the 4 years leading up to the Great Recession, the state under a Republican governor was increasing spending at 7.5%. That's the reality. We've made tremendous progress in getting our fiscal house in order, and that needs to be sustained. Of course, Tom jobs leave, and of course, Tom jobs come. By the way, with reference to Pfizer, I have been with the president of that company on several occasions, on the phone with him on other occasions. You might be happy to know that his daughter was an intern in one of my campaigns. I've been at the campus and had interesting discussions on that campus about opening up a new center, which will be devoted to the people of this portion of the state for innovation. Laboratories being made available on that campus because we intervened. That's who we are, that's what we are, that's what competition looks like. We're in discussions about other buildings being used to be occupied by other companies right here in this region who want to expand extensively. You know, I get down here pretty often. They know me over at Muddy Waters. In fact, they know me at every coffee place in town. I've spent a lot of time working on programs to bring jobs to this portion of the state because it has been hard hit, and particularly hard hit as a result of over-reliance on casino gambling and, of course, losing jobs as a result. What we need to do is diversify the economy in this portion of the state, and that's exactly what our investments at Pfizer will make. That's exactly what our other investments with small businesses will make in technology, in security, in IT. That's who we are, that's what we are, and that's what competition looks like.
Let's move on to another topic, and we have a question from Paul Chouanier to Governor Malloy.
Governor Malloy, you are participating in the Citizens Election Program, which is intended to keep the corruptive power of money out of politics. As a result, you received $6.5 million in state money to run your campaign. Yet the Democrats, using loopholes in federal law, are now using millions of dollars in donations to help you get elected, donations that would be prohibited under Connecticut's law. Aren't you making mockery of the state's clean election law?
No, we're not. We have to comply with 2 sets of laws. You know that. In your business, you have to comply with both federal law and state law. And there is a reality that when federal law, in certain circumstances, supersedes state law, you have to comply with that law first. It applies to you. It applies to the party. Now, I've run for governor against Tom Foley twice. The first time, he didn't opt into that program and outspent us by 2-1. That's the record. Right now, we're in a pretty tight race, and we have a third-party candidate who appears to be coming on, and we need to spend money. There's only one person on this stage, it's not him, it's not me, it's him, who's been fined $16,000 for breaking the law. That's what happened earlier this year. Only one person. We will comply with state law and federal law in accordance with our obligations. But we'll also spend time in making sure people actually understand my record as opposed to Tom Foley's version of my record.
Mr. Visconti?
Quickly on the previous question, go to joe4ct.com, new website. We just put up the Office of Fiscal Analysis tonight on our website. Go there and you will see what we're referencing, a link to the $4.8 billion budget deficit coming. Jonathan Peltier, you're at home watching this, and you know it. What are we going to do about that $4.8 billion deficit? Where will the governor cut if he's not going to continue with the spending that they have planned? What programs will be cut? How do we fund education? Where is the money going to come from? And we can't even balance our books. As far as the Citizens Election Program, I'm not involved with that. I never would. I believe that you can run a campaign, as I have, for 18 months on the street with hundreds of volunteers. We have raised $20,000 from individual donations, and I'm here standing in front of you tonight with almost 10% of the vote. And if it wasn't locked out of 4 debates, I'd probably be at 18 to 20%. So you can do this the old-fashioned way. That $40 million, and that's what it totals, $40 million in the Citizens Election Program, that's welfare, political welfare for these two fine gentlemen to run for office. Those negative ads you saw on TV, you paid for them. All right, you won't see them our ads because we don't have the money, but you can do it the old-fashioned way, and that $40 million could have gone to the elderly, to the veterans, to the disabled, to fuel assistance.
Mr. Foley?
Yeah.
Please. Please hold your applause.
Yeah. Listen, I'm proud to be the second person in the world to have qualified on his own for the Citizens Election Program in Connecticut for a race for governor. I believe in the concept behind the Citizens Election Program, which is to make for clean government, and I totally support clean government. What Governor Malloy and the Democrats have done is circumvent the law, Paul, as you said, and what they've done is they've taken state contractors' money. Now, state contractors cannot contribute to the state account of the state Democratic Party, but they can contribute to the federal account. And what they want to do is they want to take this state contractor money, which I think is corrupting of politicians. I will not accept state contractor money. I've been very vocal about that. This governor has taken maybe as much as $1 million of state contractor money into the federal account. That is not supposed to be spent on a state race, and that's what this governor is trying to do. He's merely trying to circumvent the law, and the problem with the system is there probably won't be a judicial determination until after the election. He knows that, and then it'll be too late to do anything about it, but it's corrupt.
Would you like to respond quickly, Governor?
There's only one person on this stage who has been found to have violated the law. It's
me?
Tom Foley. Paid a $16,000 fine. For a lot of people, that would cause them to remember. With respect to spending money, Tom, raising money, Tom, the Republican Party, which you have essentially taken over since your nomination, you didn't even wait for the primary to end or actually to be held, is raising money from the very same people that you're saying that we raise money for. I hope that you'll do what we do, and you'll spend it legally on driving people to the polls and getting people to participate in our democracy. That's what we're doing. That is a legitimate expense and a required expense to be disclosed under federal law.
Can I respond to that since you've made
yes,
a direct...
if you'd like.
First of all, I was not fined, and I did not found to have broken the election laws. So Governor Malloy is a former prosecutor and is a prosecutorial personality. I've said you probably were a better prosecutor than you're a governor. Sir, just stop making the false accusations, please. I was not fined. I was not found to have broken the law.
So Tom, did you pay a $16,000 fine or did you not?
I did not pay a $16,000 fine.
Who paid it, Tom?
I did not pay a $16,000 fine.
Remember that, folks.
We'll move on to the next question. It's the question goes to Tom Foley. It's from WNPR's Harriet Jones.
We're just a couple of weeks away from the second anniversary of Superstorm Sandy, and the Pentagon has just come out with a report that cites climate change as an immediate threat to national security. If you were the governor of a coastal state, what steps would you take to address climate change and to mitigate its effects?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Listen, we've already done a lot in Connecticut to make our contribution and then some to reducing greenhouse gases. We have built into our electricity rates and energy bills costs associated with getting alternative energy. I support most of those programs. I want to make sure that we aren't unnecessarily driving up electricity costs to make more than our fair share of the contribution toward global warming, but I certainly support the concept of making our contribution.
Mr. Visconti?
I believe we are in climate change, but it may not be global warming. There's a book called Chill. You all should look at it. Chill is the name of the book, and it talks about the fluctuations of the climate and actually moving more into a mini ice age. Things are happening in the climate that scientists on both sides disagree on. We all know this year has been a cold year, so the climate does change. There's volcanoes that have gone off in Iceland that have caused the high stratosphere elements to bring the weather to be colder. But in Connecticut, I'm for and I support. My house was 100% green energy. I do support clean energy. I think we cannot do enough to keep our environment clean for our children and for the future generations.
Do you believe climate change in part is caused by activities of man?
Yes, but not the activities necessarily that some scientists believe they are.
Mr. Foley, what do you think the cause of climate change is?
Well, what I've said is it doesn't really matter. It's happening. So if a leader and people in positions of public responsibility need to address a threat. So I don't think there's any debate about whether or not it's happening, so we have to find solutions.
Governor Malloy?
Of course it matters. And yes, we have a warming climate. And yes, it has to do with the particulate in the air. And yes, the ozone layer is shrinking. And yes, we've had Irene and Sandy and storms in months that we've never had snow in before and amounts of snow that we've never seen before. Of course there's climate change. That's why every environmental group that's made an endorsement in this race has endorsed me, because we're working together to address that. But it's also why we've put out actually, I should say this. It's why we began a climate change center to make sure that we're adapting along the coast. That's at in Groton, at the Yukon campus. That's funded and is making recommendations to communities up and down the coast and along the rivers how they could secure themselves in the event and prevent large-scale damage in the future. That's why we have funds to help clean up the Long Island Sound. But more importantly, it's why we've set aside funds to buy buffer areas and protect those buffer areas on Long Island Sound. Of course climate change is real. Of course it's beaten us up. Of course it's cost us money. And to deny that is to deny reality.
I want to, Joe Visconti, would you like to comment quickly?
I didn't deny that reality. If the governor's attitude seems like everyone here denies the reality, there is climate change. What the causes are for climate change are different. I said earlier, there's not a limit to what we can do, but there's a cost to what we can do. So the governor's attitude here sounds like he's the only one that thinks there's climate change, and that's not the case up here.
The next question is from Paul Schwenier of The Day, and it goes to Joe Visconti.
Given the political realities in the legislature, it seems highly unlikely that you would be able to achieve your goal of full repeal of the gun law that was passed in the wake of the Newtown shooting. Given that, what would be your approach to trying to perhaps win amendments to that law, and what would be your priorities in doing so?
Sure. Thank you, Paul. The amendments that I would look for, well, first, before anything, as a governor, I would hold a public hearing. I don't care if we had to rent the Hartford Civic Center. This bill deserved a public hearing. We never got one. The e-certify process was not complete. It seemed as though President Obama landing here the day the bill was signed or a couple of days later, the White House actually planned why we didn't have a public hearing on this. I would work with the legislature and horse trade with Democrats, and I would look at two amendments. The first amendments would not be the first day because you don't try to put an amendment into the legislature without knowing you can have it won. So the first one will be the magazine limitations, and I'll tell you why. I own guns in Connecticut. They're registered at the state police. I bought the guns at Hoffman's gun store in the 1980s. My Beretta 380 has a serial number, a model number, and the state police can look that up to find out that it had a magazine that held 13 bullets. Why did I have to declare that? Why can I only carry one in my gun and I can't carry the second one grandfathered? It was unconscionable that gun owners, legal gun owners, over 200,000 gun owners in Connecticut that carry a gun with a permit had to go through that. So this is the first thing that I would look to repeal, the magazine limitations, especially on handguns. The cost and also the constitutional process was something infringed upon in my estimation. The second one will be the definition of an assault weapon. Weapons are defensive. Only criminals use weapons for offense. Criminals use them. Police don't even use them. They use them in the defensive. So we've bought into this thing that assault weapons are all bad. They're dangerous. Criminals Gangsters, people in Hartford, drug trade. This is where guns are ending up, and that's where the attention has to be, to get illegal guns. We will never take guns out of America. We can't stop illegal immigrants coming here, and we can't stop drugs coming in by the cargo ship into this country. It's not possible to remove guns, and legal gun owners deserve the respect. We have already given up. If this was property rights, we have given up encroachments by everything that is lawful in Connecticut already before this gun bill passed. So the definition of an assault weapon is the second amendment that I would put in.
Mr. Foley, could you differentiate your opinion? Could you please differentiate your position on the gun law from that of Mr. Visconti?
Yeah. Listen, I'm a problem solver, and when the tragedy in Newtown happened, obviously a government response was appropriate, but I think what you need to solve a problem is focus on the source of the problem. And what my complaint is that the gun bill that Governor Malloy passed hasn't made Connecticut any safer. The source of the problem in Newtown, unfortunately, was a mental health issue. And the bill didn't address mental health issues and supplying more support to families who have members with mental health issues. There was a task force formed, but nothing's been done. If I'd been governor, the bill would have been very different. It would have focused on mental health.
Governor?
Let me compliment Mr. Visconti. At least he tells you what he thinks and what he wants to do, as opposed to Mr. Foley, who has said repeatedly on other occasions that he will sign a repeal of the bill. That's whispering to people. That's whispering to the legislature. Come back and let's repeal the bill, and I'll sign it. Mr. Visconti, I give you a lot of credit for taking this issue on. We disagree, but I can give you credit for it. Of course crime's gone down since we passed this bill. Homicide rate dropped by 32% in the state. Bridgeport's crime dropped by 20% overall in 1 year. That's an unbelievable number. And for only the fourth time in 40 years, we had less than 100 homicides in the state of Connecticut. And by the way, homicides are down this year about 20% already. Of course we're making progress. We've stopped 200 people from illegally purchasing guns after this legislation was passed. We've seen that people give up their guns because of mental conditions under this bill, because of restraining orders under this bill. Of course we're making people safer. And that's what we intend to do, and I will not veto this legislation. Tom has said he would sign a veto. I will not sign any legislation that would take this away, and I certainly would repeal a veto. Tom has said that he will sign a repeal, and at least Mr. Visconti is honest.
Mr. Visconti, do you have a quick response?
Yeah, it's tragic what happened in Newtown, and gun owners have been basically blamed for what's happened, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. They want their rights. We, in a modern world, have given up much of our rights. We register our guns, we go through background checks, we take classes to learn how to shoot. We do all that legally. Where was the public hearing if this was so important? Why didn't we have a public hearing on this? This is unconscionable what happened because rights were taken away. The tragedy was politicized. And if it wasn't for Michael Lawler and different liberals in Congress and in the Senate in Connecticut that didn't have an agenda, in my belief, that want to go further and further, and you and I discussed this on your radio show, then maybe some of the law was fine. But knowing that there's more coming, I would have to push back towards this law in two amendments.
Governor Malloy, should there have been more public debate about the laws that were passed?
There have been hearings on gun safety issues, and there were during the session leading up to this legislation. There was a bipartisan state commission made up of Republicans and Democrats who talked about this bill, or talked about what should be in a bill. Of course, there were hearings with respect to the final package put together by the two Republican leaders. And the two Democratic leaders may not have itself had a hearing, and quite frankly, I don't disagree that it should have had a hearing. But that's how they did it. I don't run the legislature, but I certainly was not going to veto that legislation.
There was a public hearing, but not on this bill. Completely different bill. I testified at 2 in the morning at the LOB. And so it was a complete different bill with complete different criteria. We never got to address this bill. No one saw it. I was the first one at the door at the LOB to receive a copy at 9 a.m. that came off the shelf. No one knows where the bill came from. Who wrote that bill? I want to know, Governor, who wrote the bill. Please check with the Democrat Party.
Before we get off this topic, Mr. Foley, Mr. Visconti had laid out some very specific things that he would take out of the gun legislation that was passed. What would you change about the gun legislation specifically?
Well, as the question was asked, we have a Democratic legislature, and the legislature passes the laws, not the governor. It seems very unlikely to me that this legislature is going to revise that bill in any significant way. And I think the opportunity to balance the interests that were at stake here was when this bill came before the legislature, and the governor was instrumental in helping design and pass this bill, and he took away a lot of law-abiding citizens' rights, and they're upset. And he did not balance those rights against the other public interests he was serving. He just went willy-nilly in the direction he wanted to go. And when I'm governor, I'm going to balance everybody's rights. I'm going to represent everybody in Connecticut. I'm not just going to represent the people who helped me get elected, the people who are contributing on the federal side of his campaign with state contractors and other funds. The special interests are not going to run the state of Connecticut. And that's what happened.
Would you push for the restoration of those rights that he took away?
I'm sorry?
Would you push for the restoration of the rights that you said he took away?
The legislature passes the laws. I don't think the legislature is going to pick that up as an initiative, so it's not going to be an issue.
Let's move on to the next question. Harriet Jones has the next question for Governor Dannel Malloy.
Governor, there are municipalities in this state where school boards this year had to face the question of which classroom services they would cut in order to pay for additional administrators to carry out expanded teacher assessment. If teacher assessment was such an important part of your education reforms, why didn't you ensure that it was fully funded in every town?
Well, let's be quite clear about what we've done with respect to funding education. There was a gigantic hole in the education funding package when I became governor. Actually, a built-in cut of $270 million. I filled that cut. It never happened. And in the intervening years, we are sending more than $237 million per year to school systems, making a real difference. And of course, working with teachers to have an evaluation system, and that came out of that process, the peak process, is important work. That's why we've made technology grants to school systems. Ultimately, people who serve on boards of education have to make decisions. But for instance, where we are in New London, their funding's up about $2.5–3 million. In Norwich, their funding is up substantially. In fact, all 30 of the lowest performing districts have seen large-scale increases in their funding, beginning at about 7.5% here in New London, and rising in some cases in communities that even higher than that. There's only 6 states that have increased funding for education over the last 5 years more than 2%. We did it by 7.5%. And we're recognized for that, and only one state did it to a greater extent. That was North Dakota, and quite frankly, they struck oil.
Mr. Foley?
Well, Governor Malloy talks about having spent a lot of money and taking a lot of initiatives, but listen, I come out of the private sector. It's not how much money you spent or how much time you spent doing something, but whether or not you got results. And no place more than education does it bother me that this governor is claimed to have made progress. The achievement gap in Connecticut, which is the worst in the country, has actually gotten worse under Governor Malloy. We have 100,000 young people in Connecticut who are not getting a decent education. The promise and premise of America is fairness and opportunity. And if you're not in a decent school, it's not fair. And you're not getting a decent opportunity when you get out to enjoy what people are supposed to enjoy here in Connecticut. I have a plan for fixing our schools. I've been involved in education reform for 15 years. I know what works and what doesn't. What the governor has done was never going to work. He mandated teacher assessments, even on school districts that are doing a great job teaching young people. We have some of the best schools in the country, and we have some that are underperforming. I'm a problem solver. The first thing you know when you're a problem solver is don't try and fix things that aren't broken. When local control is working and the schools are doing a good job, leave them alone. Let them keep doing what they're doing. This governor should have focused just on those school districts that are underperforming. He put Common Core and teacher assessments on school districts that had their own assessments and own teacher evaluation systems that were working fine. So he actually has made things worse. I will make things better with an A through F grading system. Money follows the child. A third grade reading test. And in-district school choice and public school choice in districts that are not serving students well. When I'm governor, the only person I'm going to be worried about in terms of education reform are the children. The adults can get in the back of the line.
Mr. Visconti?
Well, I have to disagree with the governor's policies on education completely. The bigger problem for us is, where's the money tomorrow? Where is the money for education with these multi-billion-dollar deficits coming? And I just can't believe I'm not hearing that dialogue here. What will we cut out of education to balance the budget? Common Core, this comes from hundreds and hundreds of teachers that I've met across the campaign trail. This is not my idea. I'm not a teacher. They don't like it for 1,000 reasons. Parents don't want it. It's disaffecting children with the stress. It was brought in from different grade levels. It didn't come in as a new math in kindergarten. So the teachers are rejecting Common Core. Parents are rejecting Common Core. That's just a piece of the problem. The money is the bigger problem. And I would ask the governor right now, if he had to balance the budget and cut spending or not increase spending 7%, as he suggested earlier, where would the money go for education? Where would it come from? Whether I agreed with his platform or not on education, where does the money come from?
Governor?
We will continue the process of increasing funding for school systems and target that funding to the districts that need it the most. I want to remind both of you that Common Core was put in to this state by a Republican governor that both of you supported. I also want to remind you that at one point, not so many years ago, the United States ranked #1 in education in the industrialized world. We've fallen to 14th place. But let me be very clear about what we are doing. Graduation rates in New London, in Norwich, in our biggest cities are on the way up. There is no extended or enlarging achievement gap, Tom. That's something that you've made up. The reality is the achievement gap is closing in the state because we're making timely investments in those districts that need our help the most.
Tom Foley, do you have a quick response before we move off of education?
No. Well, listen, I think spending on education is not just spending. That's an investment in the future. So I'm certainly not talking about reducing our commitment to spending. Listen, the governor says we're making progress. Connecticut has gone from the 6th highest in the NEAP scores 10, 15 years ago. Massachusetts was #8, and Massachusetts has since gone to #1, and Connecticut has slipped down to #9 or so. So we're not making progress, Governor. The actions you took were never funded, and they're not going to have a significant impact on educational outcomes in Connecticut. I've got a better plan.
I just want to clear up a little discrepancy because we've been talking a lot about how we're going to fund things in the state. Mr. Visconti says, and some nonpartisan observers say, there are going to be very large deficits in the next few years. Governor, you've said that there will not be those deficits. How can you account for the disparity between these nonpartisan projections and your own projections?
Because we're not going to increase spending at a 7.8% rate. We're just not going to do that. And over the past few years, I've been able to run the state government with spending increases less than half of my predecessors. That's what we've done. And we've made timely investments in technology that will allow us to lower our costs.
Mr. Visconti?
Governor, $4.8 billion in the next 3 years. If you don't increase that, what programs go the way of the busway to nowhere? What happens? What happens with $4.8 billion?
Please hold your applause.
We have to cut education. We can't do infrastructure. I mean, if you think about it objectively, forget Democrat, Republican, the governor, Tom, just take a look at the math. Go to my website, joe4ct.com, and you will go to the Office of Fiscal Analysis. That is a department in the General Assembly that puts out the numbers. The governor also, there's a table of contents where he puts out his projections. He shows $1.5 billion. But they show $4.8 billion, and I don't want to argue about it. It's there in black and white. What I want to ask is, what do we do with all the spending for everything we need in this state when we have these tidal waves coming? And this is built in with a projection, I believe, of $300 million per year of revenue growth. If we don't grow out of this recession that we're still stuck in, what do we do about that? Again, this is not to blame the governor. These are the fiscal realities that we're dealing with. And on this stage, we need to talk about them because all the other issues don't matter if there's no money for them.
Mr. Foley, would you like to address the deficits in the coming years and how you think that you would deal with them?
This is actually very simple. While Governor Malloy has been governor, spending has gone up over $3 billion. So the $1.8 billion tax increase he put on you has been squandered. It's gone up 16% on spending. Now, he says that he's increased 2.8%. I say it's 4.5%. Whatever it is, if you increase the spending next year by 2.8%, which he's proud of doing, so he's held things back, he's going to have to raise your taxes. There's no question about it. There's no other way the math works. He's going to have to raise your taxes. The only way you get rid of the deficit without raising people's taxes is by holding spending flat. And this governor has not made that commitment. I have.
But Mr. Foley, if you hold spending flat and then, as you've promised, cut the sales tax rate, won't that put a hole in the deficit?
Well, there are areas where we can save money. We can save money on corporate welfare. I've talked about the opportunity to save money on reducing the cost of delivering health care services in Connecticut. It's about 35% of the state budget. So if we can reduce the cost of treating a heart attack from $100,000 to $95,000 by working with health care providers, everybody benefits, and that'll stimulate the economy and get this stagnant economy moving in the right direction.
Mr. Visconti, I'll just tell the candidates that we may be able to add an extra minute to each person's time.
$4.8 billion, Tom, you said you will not ask for union concessions. You will not cut spending. How would you get rid of $4.8 billion? Where's your magic wand? How do you do that? It's $4.8 billion, and if it's not, prove it, it's not.
Yeah. Mr. Foley, you have a response?
It's actually not $4.8 billion. The government makes a projection of what it's going to cost to run the government next year, providing the same services.
The same services.
And they run the numbers up because they know their budgets are going to be based on that. But those budgets are as the governor said, it's about 7.5% this year. So we clearly don't have to spend 7.5%. But this governor spent 4.5%, and if he stays at that level, he's going to have to raise everybody's taxes.
Governor?
So let me remind everybody what Tom said on this stage 4 years ago. He was going to settle a $3.6 billion deficit by cutting spending by $2 billion. We don't have to reform education to understand that that doesn't work. The reality is, if he had done that, we would have lost 36,000 jobs in the state of Connecticut. You don't have to take my word for it. That was analyzed by the University of Connecticut before the election was had. What we have done, what Tom says he's going to do, we've already done. That's how we held spending down. But Tom won't tell you that Republicans built in holes into this budget that we inherited, Nancy and I. I didn't run the truck into the ditch. I didn't serve in state government. I got hired to straighten it out. And that's exactly what we've done. There were $0 in the rainy day fund. $0. Every dollar, $1.7 billion had been spent in 2 years. Today, as I stand before you, there's $520 million in the rainy day fund. That is a start. It's not a finish. But what we're seeing is real economic growth in the state of Connecticut. Tom throws figures out that, quite frankly, are either made up or misread by him. In the last 2 quarters of 2013, Connecticut's economy grew more rapidly than any other state in New England. And this first portion of the year, we saw more private investment in startups in the state of Connecticut, $300 million worth, at any time in years and years and years. We're getting stronger.
So as to even up time a bit, Mr. Visconti, would you like to jump in on this?
Very quickly. We
Please.
borrowed the money. We borrowed the surplus. We took money off our budget. We borrowed operating dollars and bonded them, and that's why Fitch Reporting Services this July said we're still negative outlook. We could lose our credit rating, especially with the tidal waves of deficits that are coming. If we lose our credit rating or it gets downgraded, right now we are spending 11% of our budget on debt service. If you look at the math and forget the politics and look at it, what do we all do on the stage if we put our heads together to get out of this? We're going to have to cut spending. We're going to have to prune back budget. We need help from the unions. We need help from everybody. And again, the unions is not your fault, but we need your help to secure your pension futures.
Paul Schwanier, I'm going to give you a question quickly to Mr. Foley.
Can I respond just briefly? For
Just
one
very
second?
quickly.
The governor makes it sound like everything's fine. He says he didn't run the truck into the ditch. We have had 1% growth over 3.5 years. Sir, you did run this economy into the ditch. You've broken the state. Heather and I are going to fix it. And you don't have solutions. You're simply not talking about how you're going to solve Connecticut's problems. I think most people feel we have some serious problems that need to be addressed.
Tom, I'll tell you what I didn't do. I didn't do what you did. I didn't lose 3,000 jobs in a company that I owned. I didn't move jobs to Mexico.
Please.
I didn't move jobs to Mexico. I don't own a $10 million house and a $5 million boat and a $1 million plane and not pay taxes in the state of Connecticut. That's not who I am, Tom.
Please. Paul, a question for Tom Foley, and we just have a few seconds for each candidate.
Yeah, just to clarify, John, you mentioned they might add time in, or are we good with the time?
I think we're still calculating the time.
Okay.
We're going to add 1 minute each to each candidate's time, and so we'll start now.
All right, very good. Mr. Foley, correct?
Yes.
We're in New London, a financially struggling city with a substantial percentage of public housing. In your urban agenda plan, you state your intent to, quote, promote an active and vibrant private housing market by ensuring the public housing market doesn't destroy the private housing market in cities. So I was wondering if you could explain, your concern of how the public housing market can damage the private housing market, and what would you do to address that?
Yeah. Just very quickly, if government money is coming in and building excess capacity in housing, it destroys the pricing of the private housing in the neighborhood, and that's bad for neighborhoods. So that investors don't want to come in and invest, homeowners get hurt. So I think that's bad for the housing stock in cities like New London. I think it's also been found that when you concentrate subsidized housing in a project, that's not good for the residents in the project or good for the city. So I think that today most public housing is more dispersed in communities. It's better for everyone. And if it's done thoughtfully and carefully, it doesn't have to hurt the private housing market and hurt people who own their homes privately.
Joe Visconti?
Well, public housing has been a problem for decades in Connecticut. We can't look at public housing without realizing that there's no jobs. I have a plan for the inner cities, and especially for the Black and Hispanic men, young men that are in prison. And this is what the major problem we're having right now in the cities that has been ongoing. Men and women at home that have kids in prison, this is racial. We need to get these young men, 19 to 25 years old, on the streets. They end up in prison and get them trained with the GED, with the trades. For decades in the business, 40 years in the trades I've worked, and I've hired men from Manpower, from Labor Ready, men I went to school with that were illiterate and never got a trade. So the public housing is one point, but the problem is they don't have jobs to get out of the public housing. We don't want public housing. We want to eliminate it and have people move up into the middle class.
Governor?
I respect you, but I have to point something out. There are more Caucasians in prison in Connecticut than there are blacks or Hispanics, and we really shouldn't be trying to divide ourselves. We should understand that there are issues that we have to deal with collectively. Housing is one of those. So I think I understood the answer that Mr. Foley gave. We have to keep people living in substandard housing in order to keep prices high. I reject that. I reject it. That's why we created a housing department. That's why we're investing money to turn housing projects that currently exist around, including inserting market rate units into places that we've rebuilt. That's what we're doing in Hartford. It's what we're doing in New Haven. It's what we are attempting to do here in New London and elsewhere around the state. Of course, we want the right mix. But the idea that somebody would have to live in a substandard house to support somebody else getting more rent for their apartment is not a good equation for Connecticut, particularly if you understand the link between education and housing.
Tom Foley, do you have a quick response?
No, I just want to say I agree with Joe, and that is that ultimately in our cities, the problem is that there aren't enough jobs. And Governor Malloy has not, with all this corporate welfare, brought any significant jobs to our cities. As governor, I've talked to people in these communities. I've talked to them about local content in government contracting and making sure when you spend government money that you're creating jobs in the community. When Governor Malloy did the busway to nowhere, he gave the contract to an out-of-state contractor, and a lot of those people are paid for with a lot of Connecticut taxpayers' money are from out of state. I've got nothing wrong with Massachusetts, but I don't know why this governor is using taxpayer money to provide jobs in Massachusetts. We need jobs here in Connecticut, and these urban communities need more jobs. They'll get them with Tom Foley as governor.
Governor, you have 10 seconds to say something.
88% of the people who worked on the busway live in Connecticut.
Joe Visconti, would you like to clarify your earlier answer?
The bus, forget the busway. Racially disproportionate for inner cities for public housing. This was my point. And again, it's not about prisoners in all. They have to get GEDs, they have to get a trade, they have to come out of prison. Many mothers are sitting home waiting for their kids to come home, and it's a cycle of revolving door in the prison system. 8.9% of our budget is the prison system.
We have quickly 30 seconds on your time, Joe Visconti. What would you do about that?
What I do with it, that's a great thing. We want a work program, and there are already programs right now in state government. We want a program where 19 to 25-year-olds are brought into a different prison system, not mixed with the general population, where they have a chance to be reformed and have a life after 25. It's a different game for them. We have a chance for them to get the GED that they failed to get in high school, to get a trade, to be brought out to areas like we did when we had commercial projects, or even the busway to nowhere, projects where these people can actually go get a job and go to work.
And we're up on time. We're now going to go to 60-second closing statements. The first closing statement is by Governor Dan Malloy.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to be your governor over the last 4 years. Tom would have you believe I've been doing nothing and standing still. The reality is that we're making large-scale investments in transportation and education in the University of Connecticut and our regional universities in public education. We've extended and are building a universal access program to pre-kindergarten because we know it will make a real difference. I'm proud of the things that we've been able to accomplish together. Yes, we needed to sacrifice. Yes, we needed to turn ourselves around, but we have done that. Our economy is beginning to grow at a rapid pace. Tom will say that we're one of the slowest growing states in the nation. That simply is not true. Our job growth is on par with the average of the 50 states, but you know what? That's not good enough. I agree it's not good enough. In fact, not until every person in Connecticut who wants a full-time job with good pay and good benefits has that job, I won't stop. I will fight for the middle class. $10.10 as a minimum wage is necessary. Paid sick days is a plus on a public health basis. An earned income tax credit rewards hard work as opposed to penalizing hard work. And yes, investments in housing are extremely important to the state's future. All of those things we have done.
Thank you very much, Governor. The next closing statement, I believe, goes to Tom Foley. To Joe Visconti. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, WNPR. Thank you, New London. Thank you, CPTV and The Day. Thank you for having the integrity to have me on the stage. Again, thank you to the 10,000 people who brought me here. I'd like to say something about Connecticut. It is a beautiful state. It's a wonderful state. I understand the governor's worked hard. I don't believe in the path he's taken. I don't believe it's the path for recovery. I understand Tom's a great man. He's a good man. I like Tom also. And his plans aren't identified. My plan immediately is we have to cut spending. Cut spending, cut spending, cut spending with the help of the unions. And we have to cut middle management. We have to reinvent the way government does business. Because in a recession, still in a recession, with an aging population, we need more government service than we're actually getting today. And I can become your governor. All you have to do is go out and vote. 2 million voters in Connecticut. We'll probably have 1,100,000 show up. I'm already polling at over 100,000 votes with $20,000 raised in 18 months. Don't believe the cynics. Get out and vote for me.
Mr. Foley.
Thank you for listening tonight and your interest in this election. If you think Governor Malloy is doing a good job and that Connecticut is making progress under his leadership, you should vote for him. If you think...
Please.
But if you think we're losing ground and Governor Malloy is part of the problem, I hope you will vote for me and Heather Summers. If you do, here's what you will get. We are going to return to you Governor Malloy's taxes that he's taken out of your pocket, and we're going to get this economy going. I'm going to hold spending flat for 2 years so we can restore fiscal responsibility here in Connecticut. I'm an experienced leader and a problem solver, and I'll work with anybody, Democrat, Independent, Republican, to solve the problems that face you and our great state. We have such great people in Connecticut. We have so many assets to work with, but we simply need to be heading in a different direction. Give me and Heather a chance, and we'll get Connecticut moving forward. We won't let you down. Thank you.
Thank you to the Garde Arts Center. Thank you to our candidates. And thank you to everyone here. Good night.